What's going on, guys? Welcome back to my Friday Night SmackDown audio review for August 23rd, 2024. I'm Graham Jason Matthews. Hope you guys are doing well and having a great weekend. Wasn't originally planning on doing a SmackDown audio review this weekend as I'm currently camping. I'm having this go up on Sunday, but I said, fuck it, we'll review the show. I enjoyed it for what it was. Far from a groundbreaking, newsworthy night on SmackDown by any means, but I thought for what it was, the matches they advertised, it actually ended up being a pretty decent show, I thought, for what it was, like I said. They started the show with Kevin Owens interrupting the Grayson Waller Effect featuring Cody Rhodes. Speaking of interrupting, they had Grayson Waller and Austin Theory interrupting Cody Rhodes' "So, what do you want to talk about?" bit. And then Cody Rhodes obviously acknowledging that Theory and Waller, respectively, have not really been getting along the last couple of months, losing their WWE Tag Team titles to DIY, and Theory being used by Waller in Cody's words, which he has been. But I will say this about the segment. It was entertaining before I even go further with what happened next. They gotta move on with Theory and Waller. Wherever they're going with the split, the teasing of the tension, it's been fine, and I'm all for trying out Theory as a babyface, but they gotta get to the next stage of that storyline. It's been going on now for way too fucking long. They initially teased tension between Waller and Theory maybe back in May. And it's kind of on and off, but they were really going in on it, like right before they lost the tag titles. And then they may have won maybe one match on TV. They beat fucking Awesome Truth on Raw right after SummerSlam a few weeks ago. And they've been really losing ever since in singles matches, tag team matches. It's time to move on. It's clearly headed in that direction. But one thing I will say about Triple H's long-term storytelling, a lot of the times it's great. It's a refreshing change of pace compared to what it used to be under Vince McMahon a lot of the time. But sometimes it's too long-term storytelling. It's a little bit too long in terms of how they're telling these stories. So with this story specifically, they got to speed it up. But in the rest of the segment, they did air a video package, which I thought was very entertaining, that Theory and Waller had prepared to kind of show Cody, hey, listen, Owens cannot be trusted. You guys think that your buddy going into Bash in Berlin, the undisputed WWE Championship on the line, you should probably watch your back. So they aired a video package of Owens, his various betrayals over the years, showing him turning on Sami Zayn once. And then again, in 2021, I think they showed the NXT one. I missed it when I was watching the show, but I'm pretty sure they showed him debuting in NXT in 2014, a decade ago, and then turning on Sami Zayn that same night. So that was the obvious one. They showed him debuting on the main roster and attacking John Cena. Not exactly a betrayal, but they included that anyway to kind of stretch out the Exhibit A, Exhibit B shit, I get it. So they included footage of him attacking John Cena in his debut, even though Owens was already a heel coming up from NXT. They showed him betraying, quote-unquote, Sami Zayn again in 2021, which it wasn't really a betrayal. Sami was a heel at that point. Owens was a babyface. They set up their match for WrestleMania. They showed him turning on Kofi Kingston back in the spring of 2019 when he was like an honorary member of the New Day. He turned on Kofi. And they also showed footage of the Festival of Friendship, of him turning on Chris Jericho, and that whole Great Raw segment from 7 years ago, which is crazy to say out loud to think it's been that long. But yeah, one of the all-time segments on Raw, all-time betrayals, whatever. And they had a really great segment. I was surprised they acknowledged that. They kind of stray away from showing AEW people, even on their own fucking YouTube channel. They haven't done that in a while, and they've done more of it recently. But on their own television shows, they typically do not show people like Jericho, and they did. So I thought that was cool. Interestingly, Owens said when he came out, all of those people deserved it except for Kofi. Kofi's a nice guy. He didn't deserve it. So Sami, the second time, that was deserved. It wasn't really a betrayal, I guess. The Cena one, I'm not really sure how he deserved that. I thought that was interesting. The Sami one the first time, the first Sami betrayal, I'm not really sure how Sami deserved that one. And even the Jericho one, it's like, I guess Jericho, because he was annoying as a character, because of who his wife voted for, I don't know, but he said he also deserved that. So I thought that was interesting. But I liked how Owens remains one of the most self-aware superstars in the entire company. He said, Nick Aldis is going to come out here and set up a tag team match for later on, but why not just do it right now? And sure enough, Aldis did come out, and they set up the tag team match for later on, and Owens and Rhodes fended off A-Town Down Under from the ring. So, we all knew where this was going, and I'll talk about the tag team match a little bit later on, but I liked how he even acknowledged that breaking the fourth wall, so to speak, and mentioning how the match will be set up for later on, and that's exactly what happened. They're not acting dumb by being like, let's fight right now, and then they set up a tag team match instead. Owens knew that tag team match was coming, but wanted to get a piece of them before then, so I like that. LA Knight defending the United States Championship on the show against Santos Escobar, who won the number one contenders match against Andrade 2 weeks ago. They did have a segment with Carmelo Hayes and Andrade on the show. Carmelo Hayes was addressing Andrade from his barbershop. Andrade stormed the barbershop. They brawled, and I guess per SmackDown Lowdown, they set this up. They set this up on SmackDown Lowdown, which I'll talk about in a separate video here on the channel a little bit later on. They are having a match next week on the show. The fourth match between Carmelo and Andrade will happen on SmackDown next week, 2 days before Bash in Berlin, or I guess a day before, because the pay-per-view's on Saturday, not Sunday. But anyway, so Escobar is the number one contender. This was kind of a homecoming of sorts for LA Knight. I know LA's in the name, and he's been living in Los Angeles for the last 10, 11, 12 years, he mentioned. But he also said in a separate promo later on in the show, and I think he mentioned this last week as well, maybe on SmackDown Lowdown, that he actually grew up not far from D.C., where the show is emanating from. I have an Eli Drake shirt, actually, I was wearing last night while watching the show on Friday. And he's from, or spent a lot of time in Hagerstown, Maryland. I'm not sure if that was where he was born or grew up, but he mentioned he spent a lot of time there, and he had probably friends and family in the crowd for this show. So I thought it was cool. He got a great reaction per usual, regardless of whether he has ties to DC or not, that area. But he was super over on the show. They had a very good match, and I think not only with this match, but the next match, the women's tag team match, which was a pretty standard 6-woman tag team affair. With this match as well, they worked well together. They had a fun match. It was made even better by the crowd investment and the crowd involvement. Because of how over Knight is, he will work well and get over other people simply by working with them. He's kind of at a point now where he feels untouchable in terms of how over he is. He's a champion. That's great. Hopefully the idea is, as U.S. champion, he can help also get over people like Carmelo Hayes and Escobar and Andrade if they work together. And Andrade and Hayes, to their credit, are getting over through their current series of matches. Escobar can never really win whenever it matters most, but hopefully he does gain something from this performance. And again, like I said, I thought it was a well-wrestled, good, enjoyable United States Championship match, even though the outcome was never really in doubt. The 6-woman tag team match I mentioned was Naomi, Bianca, Belair, and Jade Cargill battling Blair Davenport and the current WWE Women's Tag Team Champions, Alba, Fyre, and Isla Dawn. Pretty standard stuff here, but again, the baby faces were so over in this match, that being Naomi, Belair, and Cargill, that it made the crowd kind of into the match more than they probably would have been otherwise. And had a few awkward moments, but largely it was well done, nicely paced. The baby faces go over, get their big moment. Naomi pinned Davenport, so any momentum, anything that Davenport gained from beating Naomi last week immediately was erased as soon as Naomi pinned her here. Now, it was announced even before the match happened that at Bash in Berlin next Saturday, Bianca and Jade will be getting another opportunity at the WWE Women's Tag Team Championship on that show, which is fine. It's great that they're being, included on the card. It is funny, though, when I saw a report from one of those wrestling websites, I'm not sure is totally legit. I think it was #PWN. That was a Twitter account, but I think their news might be hit or miss. They're not like Fightful or The Observer or PW Insider, but I think they have had some credible stories in the past. Regardless, it was reported about, like, they were discussing, why haven't the tag team titles been defended on these pay-per-views? The women's tag team titles have, obviously. This is going to be the third pay-per-view since Mania, not including Mania. They were defended at Backlash. Actually, I think the fourth. They were defended on Backlash. That's where Bianca and Jade won them. They were defended on the pre-show, but still on the show nonetheless, for King and Queen of the Ring. I think it was Jade and Bianca versus Candice and Indy. And then Alba and Isla won the tag titles at Clash of the Castle back in June. Whereas the men's tag titles, and there's 2 sets of those, have not been defended on any fucking pay-per-view since WrestleMania. And that was where the tag team titles were split up. We had a tag team title match on the show for the WWE Tag Team Championships, but we have not had a single tag team title match on pay-per-view for the men since Mania. That was almost 5 months ago. That's inexcusable. But again, back to this match. It was well done. Helped the babyfaces build more momentum for next weekend. So there is that. We also had a great video package from Meechin. Speaking of next week, LA Knight mentioned in a separate promo, I think on social media, he's having an open challenge for his United States Championship on that show. So I don't know who's going to answer it. It would be cool if it was like a new signing, but I'm pretty sure, and the crowd would go crazy because they're in Berlin. It's probably going to be a hot crowd, I'm sure. But the show will be taped earlier, obviously, and spoilers will be available. So I can't imagine it's going to be anyone too major. My guess is that it's going to be Giovanni Vinci. They've been airing vignettes for his return the last couple of weeks. I don't think they did on this show, but it would be cool if he got a match. I mean, I don't think he's fucking German. I know Kaiser has ties to the area. He would have been perfect, but he's on Raw. Maybe they could work something out. I don't know. But I'm pretty sure it's going to be Vinci would be my guess. So they advertised that for next week. Nia Jax and Michin, great video package for Michin on the show. It's going to be for the WWE Women's Championship. Michin's not winning, but it will be a straight fight, and I'm looking forward to that match next week as well. A couple big matches advertised for next week's show. WWE Tag Titles were defended on this show, as they mentioned. The Bloodline taking on the Street Profits. The Profits becoming number one contenders last week by beating DIY. Good match here. The crowd was kind of quiet. Before the match, Solo Sikoa cut a promo and mentioned that Jacob Fatu will not be tag team champion. I mean, they're defending the tag titles through the Freebird rule, which is fine. That kind of makes sense, actually. But he needs Jacob as his enforcer, so he's giving the tag team title to Tonga Loa. And the reality behind it, I would imagine, is that Jacob Fatu still is not cleared, and that's why he's defending the tag team titles. Tonga Loa is being tasked with defending the tag team titles on Jacob Fatu's behalf, which makes sense. I mean, I think the Gorillas of Destiny should be the tag team champions out of the group. Maybe Jacob Fatu beats, I don't want to rush anything, but maybe Jacob Fatu beats Knight at some point for the United States Championship. Ideally, he's a world championship main event performer, but they may not want to rush that. I get it. So that's a possibility as well. And, the match here was good. I thought it was well wrestled. Wasn't really anything out of the ordinary, but it was solid. Tama Tonga Loa winning after interference from the rest of the Bloodline, and that was that. DIY making the save, or attempting to make the save for the Profits afterward before they were cut off by the Bloodline. Seeming like they're setting up an 8-man tag team match for some point. DIY and the Profits versus, I don't know, Jacob Fatu's not cleared yet, so maybe it's going to be a little bit later down the road. But Tonga Loa, Tama Tonga, Jacob Fatu, and Solo Sikoa 8-man tag would make sense against the Profits and DIY at some point. They showed an interesting segment after the break, when they came back from break, of Byron Saxton by the trainer's room, and B-Fab was like, they're fine, the Profits are fine. And then Candice and Indy were shown walking into the trainer's room to go check up on DIY. So I think I mentioned this in last week's review, or maybe in SmackDown Lowdown in my review of that show, because they kind of teased it there. Maybe DIY go heel, because they saw that the Profits kind of failed in their opportunity where they may feel like they would have succeeded, even though they also lost the Bloodline a couple of weeks ago. Maybe it's possible they turn on the Profits and we get a whole heel way, without Dexter Lumis, of course, but maybe we get a heel way on SmackDown with them versus the Profits, which may not be the worst thing, but I feel like they're just now gaining momentum as babyfaces. I would not turn them, but just something to keep an eye out for. As far as like the Bloodline stuff, I'm not really sure where they go in the interim. I had seen from earlier on in the day on Friday, either Friday or Thursday, it was reported that Roman Reigns is actually no longer advertised, because the next thing he was advertised for was not like next week's SmackDown or even Bash in Berlin, which by this point they would have announced Roman and Solo for that show if it was happening on that show. The next advertised appearance for Roman would have been on the first SmackDown on USA, and I think on September 13th, if I'm not mistaken. And from what I understand, from what I had seen, he's being taken off the advertising for that show. So I don't know when Roman's coming back. I would think Roman and Solo would make sense for Bad Blood. That could be a stacked show between Roman and Solo, even though that's not like a barn burner, but it's a big match considering how long they've been building it up for. That and Punk and McIntyre probably inside Hell in the Cell, Rhea and Liv one more time. A lot of big matches could be happening on that show. Braun Breaker versus the winner of this upcoming Intercontinental Championship number one contenders tournament. A lot of different matches they could do on that show. But yeah, so I don't know if Roman's not on that show. I don't know when he's coming back. So I don't know if he's not here in the meantime. I'm not really sure what the Bloodline do in the meantime. If Solo's done with Cody for the time being. I know he said, I want next on Owens and Rhodes, which hopefully will not fucking happen, because we already saw him lose to Cody at SummerSlam, so what's the appeal there? But anyway, we get to the main event. Kevin Owens and Cody Rhodes beating, predictably, A-Town Down Under. We literally saw this exact same match like a month or two ago. The only difference is that they were teasing the story of, can they coexist between Owens and Cody? They did. They did a subtle tease for Owens turning on Cody afterward, grabbing the belt, running towards him. He was obviously just giving it to him. Did so in a very weird way if he wasn't going to turn on him. But, they're going to continue to tease that story going into the pay-per-view. I don't think he ultimately does turn. I don't think he needs to. I think they could tease it, and then Orton comes back to SmackDown and turns on Owens and Cody, and then he goes heel. I feel like that would make more sense. Maybe they both go heel. Who knows? At least one of them. And I feel like that would be a pretty valid turn for SmackDown that they could really benefit from. They need more top heels. Solo ain't that guy. And on the babyface side, they have Cody. They got Orton, Roman now, Kevin Owens, LA Knight, among other people. They don't really need all those top baby faces. They can afford to turn at least one of them. I think Orton should be that guy to set up Cody and Orton for the fall, but could end up being Owens. I guess we'll find out in due time. But a pretty standard ending to the show, nothing exciting. I think that overall the show had a good vibe to it. The crowd was energetic. I enjoyed the show for what it was. Again, nothing groundbreaking, not far from the most newsworthy SmackDown in the last couple of months. I thought SmackDown last week was actually better, but I thought this was a solid show for what it was, and really not a whole lot of note. But like I said, though, next week's SmackDown in Berlin will be taped in advance. I will not be watching. I'll be watching the show. Won't be reviewing it here on the channel due to the fact the pay-per-view is on Saturday morning. So usually that's when I record these reviews. Not doing it next week because the pay-per-view's at like 1 p.m. Eastern time. So no SmackDown review next week. We should be back at it the following week with the fallout from Bash in Berlin. But also check out my SmackDown Lowdown review, which also should be up today. I'm recording this on Saturday, putting it up on Sunday during the All-In pay-per-view, which I will be watching, due to the fact that, like I said, I'm currently camping. The Wi-Fi sucks. The Wi-Fi is not great, so I'm waiting until I'm back home on Sunday to upload this. So anyway, guys, enjoy All In. Enjoy the weekend. I'm Graham G.S. Matthews, and I'll catch your ass down the road.